Hello, and welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. A special welcome, as always, to those of you joining us for the first time. For some of you, a little bit of a shock, this is the first time in over 4 years that we've been producing this podcast. This is the first time we've ever produced video. So, you get to see me in tow while we're talking here. And we're going to have two guests that are going to help me to break ground with this new video format for the World of UX podcast. But let's go ahead and dive in there, shall we? We're going to get ready to bring our first guest on. You are familiar with our first guest. He's been on the show before. Both of our guests are UX veterans, but we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it today. Our first guest is Lou. Susi, welcome to the show. Lou.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for having both of us on. And I've been in design since about 1999, not necessarily strictly UX at first, but worked my way in, not through any formal education, but just by doing the work, either on my own and or doing it at startups and or companies in the Boston area. So I've probably been doing UX since about 2004 or so on a more, official kind of level. I got into both design and UX through fine arts or through more visual design and visual art. And then worked my way into, learning how to do research and to incorporate research and really just listen to the feedback I'm getting from the field and even from sales, marketing, et cetera, and use that in a way that makes better experiences happen. And my light bulb moment for me coming into the field, I just think that I probably landed most solidly when I was at Monster, although that was an interesting, maybe first experience on a larger team. I really did get the notion that with their Monster Usability Lab, I got more exposure to the research side of the industry and got to work with lots of different people and eventually work my way up to a UX lead position, which was fantastic. So that's where I'm at. And as far as what I'm doing now, I am, as I was saying a little earlier with Astrid, I've been happily unjobbed now since 2002, but doing some what I call non-entrepreneurial work and or consulting work and teaching as well. So thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that people enjoy hearing your takes, and we're looking forward to this episode. We are introducing another person to the show, one person who has not been on the show previously, but someone that we have been interacting with a lot off and on for the last couple of years ago, 2-3 years, I think, or has it been closer to the beginning of the pandemic? But this person has an extensive background, absolutely loves the discipline. Someone else I've been wanting to get on the show for a while. We finally got her. All right. We finally got her on the show. I want to introduce to the World of UX audience and then have her give her formal introduction to you all. Welcome, Astrid Chow. Welcome to the show, Astrid.
So happy to be here. I'm Astrid Chow. I've been in the design world, the UX and design world for between 15 and 20 years, something like that. Also, came into UX originally. I was a fine arts English and design person from Carnegie Mellon, really focused in installation art. So it's interesting. I came into it from a very different direction because all my installation art really was about building trust with people so that they would actually interact with the art, which is such a big thing. And doing a lot of research around that, I didn't know there was anything like UX. I'm not even sure it's called that back then. And then I just went into design and found out that there are things like, user advocates. And that to me really, really spoke to me. So I think I ended up doing a little bit of, I was a studio designer in the advertising world. 2008, 2009 hit, went back to school at Bentley, got my MBA and, HFID. And then I've been working in the field, I think 15-ish years, but focusing really the last 10-ish, 15, between 10, 15 years on design for healthcare specifically. So that's a space that I'm really passionate about. And I'm now working at a Highmark, which is a health insurance company. But previously I was working at Eleanor Health, which is an addiction medicine startup. So really excited about that. And my light bulb moment, let's see. Yeah, I think my light bulb moment really is just the understanding that, there are things like user advocates. I really believe in patient advocacy. So that's like something I really believe in. So yeah, really excited to be here.
Fantastic. We're glad to have you, and I am looking forward to your takes. We have several topics that we're going to dive in today with the three of us. I'm looking forward to seeing what folks have to say about these things. I know the audience will as well. Some of these are hot topics. Some of these are things that don't come up a lot, but should. They're things that we should be concerned about in and around the world of UX today. One of the things I'll sort of, this may or may not be related to what we're going to talk about, but a little bit of a soapbox moment for me. Something that I constantly mention is that for those who are in UX, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, everybody who's in UX is an ambassador for this discipline. This discipline is roughly, it's not even 30 years old yet. Astrid mentioned it. We didn't call it UX at a certain point in time, but everything that this discipline is, no matter what it was called, it's roughly just under 30 years old, 30 years in the mainstream when I say that, because we'll get the trollish folks will say, Darren, we were doing HCI before that. Until the advent of the internet, if there had been no internet, we wouldn't even be on this. We wouldn't even be on this call right now. That's when things took off. That's when the discipline took off. That's when it came into the limelight. That's when corporations started getting involved at a very, very immersive level and an immersive way. And so when I talk about the discipline only being that age, I'm talking about those years. Because really, if you traced it, you could trace what we now refer to as UX. I've traced it back to the early 1900s. I trace it back to people like Henry Dreyfuss, who was a stagehand back in the day. And what a phenomenal book. Look up Henry Dreyfuss on Amazon. Look up his books, listeners out there, and you'll find some books that he designed, that he talked about. What he was doing was experience design. People would refer to it as experience design. And the stuff that he was doing back then was absolutely phenomenal. And he went from being a stagehand to eventually helping to design the first Hoover vacuum cleaner. He worked on one of the first telephones back in the day. Just some phenomenal stuff. And it was all about making sure that the experience was optimal. He worked on the ergonomics. He worked on cognitive load. He did all of these things. But UX didn't become what we now know it until the late 90s. Even though, we all know about Don Norman and his work at Apple in the early 1990s. But it wasn't until the advent of the internet that this stuff came to really the point where we all got on board. And so with a 30-year immersion, approximately, it still needs people to talk about advocacy, to advocate for the discipline itself. Some people don't like to evangelize, truth be told. There are still a lot of people that don't understand who we are and what we do. There has to be some degree of education, some degree of caretaking when you're doing the work, or it's going to fall on deaf ears or just flat out be hijacked. But that's me and my little soapbox moment. So we'll start out there. Some of that stuff may come up again in a bit. But topic number 1. We're going to spend some time talking about, of course, one of the biggest hot topics in UX today, artificial intelligence, AI. So Astrid and Lou, you folks can chime in. Let me know who wants to start us off, or we can go back and forth. I know this is a big topic for Astrid, and so maybe we can ask Astrid as the newest guest. We'll defer to Astrid and let her kick off on this topic today. Go ahead, Astrid, and you can go ahead and chime in on the topic of AI. What are your thoughts with regard to AI and as it pertains to user experience? Take it away.
Oh boy, I could go on. Um, so I can give a little bit of background about like my experience designing for it. I worked in doing healthcare design for a long time, and specifically in behavior change applications. And when it comes to habit building, things like that, eventually you're really going to have to start thinking about patterns and things like that. So I started getting really interested in algorithms. I was actually at CVS Health working on some of that stuff when IBM Watson Health came to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in working or starting a studio that doing healthcare design, but with AI?" And I hadn't really worked in that space, but the thing that really drew me to it was I wanted to make sure that there was someone in the room to raise their hand on sort of like the ethical aspect of it. So when someone, was saying, let's pull all this health data, let's pull all of it and predict this, that, or the other, I just really wanted to make sure that I could be in that room to say, okay, so just because we can do that, could we do that? And we need to allow people to have some amount of control or understanding that this is happening. Because the minute that you start breaking that trust, people aren't going to interact at all with it. So that's always sort of been my like core belief, is really trying to, as a, user advocate, user-centered designer, really understanding the technology behind it and working with data scientists and working with those people to really understand when we propose these beautiful, big ideas, like what does that actually mean and what can you actually do? And it's really complicated. Anyone that's actually worked designing AI products knows that it takes a long time before it actually can bear any fruit. Like you have to collect a lot of data before it can start to show something. And that's a really hard thing to design for. It really, really is. And it's really hard to develop trust or even a business case if you can't show results immediately. So it's really interesting that we're at this phase where everyone's using, generative AI to do all sorts of things. But there are also, as we know, these cautionary tales of when should we, can we, what's this going to mean for the future? How is this going to impact how people interact with our experiences? What's real? What isn't real? So yeah, I've lots and lots of challenges there.
Fantastic. Lou, are you ready to jump in on this topic?
Oh, sure. Especially what you just said, Astrid, on what's real and what isn't real. That was actually a big part of my thesis. I made up a Bureau of Cyber Investigation and conducted a bunch of experiments. And the reason why I did that is because I could tell that with the mass proliferation of data that anyone could publish at any time, it just really is difficult to figure out what's real. And I think that's why our nation is probably where we're at right now, is information literacy is not exactly high on the educational spectrum for public schools, at least. And it's something that we all have to learn how to deal with every day. So the real versus unreal for me is especially important with, I think the biggest danger of AI isn't that they'll take our jobs or that there's an evil monster robot that's going to come get us, but that people are going to believe that it's a real thing. Every single AI that I encounter now that's new has a name. Like on Amazon the other day, Amazon told me, "Hi, I'm Rufus." And it had like a little thing. And I thought, you are not Rufus. I know you're not Rufus. You're
These
just
names,
AI.
the names that they come up with are just like amazing to me. Yeah.
And I just thought like, well, Rufus, can you talk with Cindy over at Bank of America and maybe go on a trip with them? Like just leave me alone. I don't want to pretend anymore that you're a real person because I know you're not. And you're a guesstimate of what the next logical conversational piece of your response to my prompt is. Just be that, like, let's not pretend. And I don't know why we have to, but there's just always, for me, I didn't come into, even though I came into the industry through visual arts and, liking really beautiful design and artwork. I do believe my role in the industry is to really question a lot of it and question why we're doing things and question what's appropriate and when. An innovation that comes along too quickly is bound to miss the mark. And if it's not carefully dealt with and thoughtfully designed and developed, you can get a lot of people into big trouble. And I think in a weird way, between social media, AI, misinformation, I mean, that's what makes us face, I think, some of the biggest challenges we'll have over the next 10 years.
Oh yeah, definitely. Didn't they just banned social media in Australia for kids, right? I
For
think
16 and younger. Yes, they did. Yep.
and I immediately was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Did
Yep. And I heard that the soldiers that they sent from Korea up to Ukraine on the Russian side now had new information that they could surf, which happens to be porn. And so it like veered them off their focus, which, might be good for us. But, obviously it's, there's a control and power aspect to AI and to information technology that we don't always consciously manage the right way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Something that Astrid said reminded me of a report I heard about 2 weeks ago. I'm wondering folks' thoughts on this, where it was health related. So Astrid, this is going to be right in your house. There was AI was being used to transcribe, if I remember correctly, research data. It was not a UX initiative, but there was some type of research data, and AI was supposed to create it's supposed to take the recordings from the sessions and create a transcript so people could review the transcripts. And the AI was inserting things that did. Folks heard about it? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Well, a lot of the technologies I've tried in Zoom meetings with someone that's an accountability partner of mine, as we experimented with them, we just came to the conclusion that these weren't for transcribing. They were actually trying to make summarized notes for you so that you could have some insights from your meeting. And they were drastically off from what you could just jot down here and there in your physical notes, as a person. So I do think, I find it very interesting they call, when AI gets it wrong, they call it a hallucination. But when we get it wrong, it's called a lie, right? Or it's an accident, right? But hallucination just sounds so much nicer.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about these things, because when I was at Watson, we worked on similar software applications. What's interesting, what I found to be the most interesting was we got a chance to actually observe a training session. So they get experts to train the models. And again, this is one of my sticking points too, is we need to do a better job of understanding who are these people that are training, who are these experts that they're training, because for many reasons, there are issues there. But among them, a lot of the time, they're just amplifying a lot of bias because the representation of those experts tend to be the same types of people, the same demographics, the same biases. And yeah, it comes out. It comes out in the results. You see it.
And nobody seems to be considering that. I was about to say nobody's considering it. It seems like nobody is considering it. And now, I mean, a big part of UX is risk mitigation. I love the things associated with UX. Yeah, guess what? Figma can't mitigate risk. So anyway, throw that in there. Got to take a pot shot at Figma real quick. But shouldn't people be, if we need to consider where this could fail, and we need to plan for that, and we need to account for it. I mean, aren't we concerned about the output? Aren't we concerned about what we're trying to accomplish? I'm flabbergasted by, I was in a meeting once and we were talking about, it was me and it was a faculty meeting at a particular university, which of course people know what universities I'm at. So there's going to be one of those. And someone was just hyping AI. AI is great, and AI this, and AI that. And you know me, I'm not gonna sit and be quiet. Upset because And people say, well, Darren, you just might ruffle feathers. No, I don't. It's not that at all. I am completely dedicated to and understand the ethics associated with this discipline that we love. And if we do not consider, if we do not commit ourselves to and function from a perspective of risk mitigation, then we're not being ethical. And so what are the potential pitfalls? What are the potential problems? We need to, I'm not saying not to go forth with AI, and AI can eventually be great. And number one, it's not new. It's just been hyped, and somebody starts seeing dollar signs. And frankly, that's why we see AI used and presented to the degree that we do, because of the potential income. That's why it's happening. For those of you who are out there drinking all the AI Kool-Aid, let me bust your bubble and let's call it what it is. We have to see this could potentially happen. This could potentially be a problem. This could be something that we have to deal with if things don't go well. Let's plan for that.
Yeah.
Let's have a plan B, have a plan C, have a plan D, and be ready to pivot. That's another hidden gem in UX, is that sound, grounded, ethical UX professionals are ready to pivot. We prepare for the pivot. We often have to pivot. If what you wanted to do doesn't work, you have to have another plan. Then you have to have another plan for that, and another plan for that, and another plan for that. And that's why the Figma jockeys don't bring much to the table. Because the Figma jockeys don't have another plan. Just like the InVision jockeys. I heard somebody, I don't have that sound effect, so I can't do that. But
That's okay.
somebody was saying that somebody literally, I guess they called it a hot, I can't say hot take, but they were saying, it's possible that Figma could be dead in 2 years because of AI.
Oh, yeah.
That a lot of the stuff that people are depending upon Figma for can be done in AI with little to no effort by people who have no skill. Since people are trying to equate Figma, I think in last week's podcast or 2 weeks ago, people are starting to equate, I think it was 2 weeks ago, people are starting to equate Figma expertise, Figma technical expertise with seniority in the discipline.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going,
Yeah, that does make sense.
Well, I think, those of us that have been in it long enough and seen all the tools come and go. No.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, how many tools have you seen come and go? Which ones can you focus?
How much money did I spend learning Flash? I don't even want to remember. It was it's too much money.
You know what I want to say every time I hear somebody say Flash? I hear somebody say Flash. You know what I want to say, right? In response, oh, to do the Flash Gordon.
Exactly.
Yep, I locked myself in a room and learned Flash.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I locked myself in a room to learn Flash for about 4 or 5 hours. I did the same thing with fireworks. I still miss
Right. Oh, yeah.
I locked myself in the room once for about half an hour, and I had my fill of After Effects, and I just left. I was done. I didn't I didn't stick that one out. But yeah, that's another one. I'll throw one out. And so Lou, you're on deck.
Yeah.
A tool that went away. Man, there's so many that come to mind. I'm just gonna throw one out there in general. But I still use it when I need to dig into code. Dreamweaver.
Oh yeah, I use Dreamweaver, but I don't use it for the WYSIWYG. Like I would never drag something in the visual part because I know it's going to mess up what I'm typing down in the code area. So I definitely use it. One that none of us would ever use anymore is ImageReady, right? I mean, because you don't make websites with tables anymore, and I don't know. But Flash always brings me back to Director. With Lingo and CD-ROM production, that was always fun. But I never really learned Lingo enough. But the tools, I kind of wish that we saw AI as the tool that it is, right? Just like Figma is. I want to say, folks, it's just a tool. Let's learn it the way we need to learn it, and the developers are probably going to remake the code anyway. So I would never trust that if I gave someone a prototype that I coded or marked up in Dreamweaver, that a developer is going to say, oh, that's the best way to do the CSS. They're probably going to incorporate it with the real CSS. And I mean, I believe that I should be able to go into certain tools and be able to pass things off to developers, but I don't want to be responsible for that side of it to the degree that a developer needs to be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't know, maybe this is naive, but I still want to work with developers. Like I want to brainstorm with them. Like I want to be working with them on the same screen. Because we have ideas. They have different perspectives. It makes things much more, expansive.
I think that was one of the points that Dan Zollman recently gave a lecture about AI.
Yes.
And he said that that's one of the things that's happening is people don't collaborate with other people as much because now they can ask their little assistant, right? And that's a problem because we also have people that aren't socialized enough to be able to get over the shyness factor of just going over and talking to someone,
Yeah.
if they can now ask ChatGPT or whatever name of the week, your AI is going to be.
Yeah. I left a company once because they told me it would be a year before I could talk to a developer.
What?
And I was
That's
like, no.
insane.
Yeah. They said it's going to be a year before you can actually talk and work with a developer on what you're working on. And I said, no. And this is during the pandemic. So I was like, no.
Wow. That's wild.
I've never even tried to say that before.
Yes. Yeah. And I went directly to like a startup where I'd be working on with the engineers directly because I was like, no, I can't. No one has time to wait around a year, especially during a pandemic. No, we have to build these things now. It's crazy.
Gary,
I don't even know what you could accomplish without that. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, you made me think about, and I talk about this all the time, the old classic Venn diagram, user needs, business needs, constraints.
Mm-hmm.
And in the constraints, the way I always explain it is that information is coming from your subject matter experts across a whole host of other disciplines that you collaborate with. And so I don't know what the constraints are. I don't know what we can or can't do if I don't get input from a developer. Right. I can get all kind of crazy, groundbreaking ideas, but if we can't execute it based on whatever tech stack we're working with, I can't talk to them for a year.
Right.
You're talking about a potential wasted year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have 4 plans, as I said, and I always do. But that's just it doesn't make sense.
And for me, it's always not fun. Like I got into design and decided not to be an artist because I like working within constraints. It makes me more creative. I want to work with different disciplines because it makes me grow. It challenges me, right?
And the innovation doesn't happen in one person's head. It happens in that space between the developer, the business, the designer, and whoever else comes into play as the subject matter experts.
Exactly.
So that's literally, like you said, a wasted year, but also in my mind, you just would not be able to accomplish nearly as much. I don't know why a company would want that.
No. Yeah. And you just remind me of, we spent some time at the Innovatrium, I believe it's called, at University of Michigan. And we went to some innovation workshops when I was a manager at Bosch. And one of the things that they talked about when we were in that workshop was that true innovation requires diversity.
Oh yeah.
Hello.
If you are too narrow in your scope, you actually will not be able to innovate. So we need to be able to talk to developers. We need to be able to talk to product owners. We need to be able to talk to the QA people. We need to be able to talk to every other discipline that we work in alignment with in order to achieve the goal. So we do everything as a team. We're the UX people, but the UX people don't get anywhere without the other disciplines.
Right.
And they don't get anywhere without us. They don't.
But I think we also get more innovative work done when there's tension, productive tension. But when I'm trying to push the boundaries of what I think is a good experience and I'm being told I can't do it, but then I talk to someone else and they're like, nope, that person should be able to do that because there's this, this, and this. I mean, not to get anyone into trouble, but I do think that it's very important to talk with just also more than one person, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's no growth without tension and some sort of, right?
Right.
An old boss of mine called that healthy friction.
Healthy friction. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's a great phrase for it.
I think Lou heard this. I don't know if you ever heard me say this, Astrid, but I was going to walk away from the discipline in 2008. And my then boss, had a conversation with me because he knew what my frustrations were. And back then, I'm going to mention this because it might be exactly where somebody is. Man, I do all this great research, but they don't want to listen to me. Man, I get all these wireframes and they're going to shoot it down because of something that they don't understand. And I'm going through listing out all my frustrations. So I was in 2008, 16 years ago, I was ready to walk away from all of this. And he said, Darren, there is such a thing as healthy friction. And the light bulb came on and I started welcoming people challenging what I was doing. I started welcoming people asking me to explain why I recommended that we go this particular way with the designs. I started embracing it. And here we are doing a podcast. And
thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so some friction can be healthy and it's necessary.
Yeah.
And some of us need to be challenged. It keeps us humane, I like to say, because it keeps us considerate about other people's viewpoints instead of riding off on the winds of our own excitement, so to speak, which is really not healthy.
Right.
We need somebody to put us down from time to time. We need to be questioned. We need to question ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of our roles, right? I think of that as part of my job.
Yes, it is. Although people are not explaining it. That's part of who we are. We are the voice of reason. I had a nickname at one company I worked at. My nickname was Dr. No. Because people we'd get together with all these different people with all of these different disciplines at a creative agency I was working at. And sometimes they would say something. Was it a good idea? In general, yes. When you brought the UX perspective, no, it wasn't a good idea. We can't do that because people can't see it. We can't do that because the cognitive load is too high. We can't do that because the contrast is bad. So they would call me Dr. No, but it wasn't because they hated me. Some of those people came back and said, years later, you are the best UX person I ever worked with. I actually have people telling you that because of those no's. I didn't just say no, I would explain it.
Yeah.
Say, this is why I love your idea, but consider this. Risk mitigation. Heuristics. We can't use that. It's cute, but nobody can relate to that. You can't do that because that color is thought of in this way in this particular culture.
Right.
So you can't.
Yes.
So, we're aware of all that. That's what we do. Not, have Figma will travel. Again, I'm jumping on Figma. So, this broadcast is not sponsored by Figma. You know that. So.
I mean, but again, it's one of those things, like, especially in healthcare, one of the things I always say is like, it's great. Like I thought I would be in the consulting, like agency world forever. And then I finally hit a point where I was designing, healthcare behavior change tools. And it's great to paint this beautiful picture that's so happy and everything's working. But with behavior change, like you need to see if it actually resonates. Like, is someone going to use this? Are they going to continue to use this? Are they going to be able to grow with this? And that's much more interesting. And that's where UX really, I think, lives. Is like, yes, it has to be beautiful. It has to be pretty. It has to be attractive and understandable. But also, like, does it resonate? Can someone take this tool and make it their own?
Yeah.
I can't find that out if I work at an agency. I need to go in and do the dirty work and release it and see it not work and then release again,
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Gotta love it, right? Hi, folks. That's all the time we have for today. This is part 1 of 4 of my session with Lou Susi and with Astrid Chow. We hope you enjoyed what you heard today and will find it useful. 3 more parts. We're covering 5 topics in all, but we're going to split it up into nice, digestible chunks. We hope you enjoy it. and we hope you're looking forward to the next sessions. But until next time, this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, signing off. Happy UXing, everybody.